Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm joined with Nichols, SD1, and Joe748. Nichols, how you doing?
My body aches and I'm mad at the government, but otherwise I'm all right.
You're coming in feisty today. SD1, how are you doing?
I don't know if it can get better than this, Colin. Really? Yeah.
I'm doing great. It's August. We're in Vegas, and it's not insanely hot.
Yeah, it's a mild 93 degrees outside right now. We just finished a boot camp, and it was a blast. And we're still in town, so we thought we'd record a podcast or two. Our topic is AP ethics. And we're going to wing it a bit, but I'll first say, look, none of us are ethics experts, or we didn't study philosophy of ethics. And there could be some bias because you all are APs. You know, so of course, if we've chosen to do advantage play, that means that we're going to have all a similar slant, but we're going to try to be as forthright and honest and authentic as possible and just jump into this stuff. Well, let's start out by even defining what do we mean by ethics, maybe versus legality. So what are we discussing here when we talk about AP ethics versus the laws of advantage play in casinos? Well, you know, there's a classic thing. You tell someone that you count cards and they say, isn't that illegal? To which you say,
No.
Correct answer, Nichols.
Or I say yes because I'm tired of explaining it.
Yeah.
And I just walk away.
They don't believe you. Are you sure? I'm sure.
And then there's another layer of legality where it's like something that could be legal or illegal in New Jersey, like backing you off and you hop on over to Pennsylvania is now illegal for, you know, so.
So when we're talking about ethics, generally, I would say that 99% of advantage players I've talked to would agree on that we don't cheat. We don't do things that you could end up in jail for rightfully. For example, devices. Like the old teams, they used shoe computers because they were legal. And then, you know, most people stopped using them when it became illegal. Pass posting, you know, like collusion with the staff. There was a fun conversation that came up in the after hours last night about collusion. Anything like that, that if you were caught doing, you'd end up in jail for. 99% of APs wouldn't go there. That's not really what we're talking about with ethics, though, right? There are things that get a little bit more gray area. That's what we want to discuss. Agreed?
Yes.
Yep. All right. Well, then let's jump into them. What about the ethics of cover and deception? How do you guys think through this? That there's a level of, the argument can be made, there's a level of dishonesty, that you're kind of lying to the casino when you are using cover or backstory, anything like that. How do you guys think through this stuff?
Well, I would start with saying that deception or dishonesty in and of itself isn't inherently unethical, right? Like if you go to a therapist or counselor's office, there's going to be some level of deception or manipulation of you during that intake to get the information they need to be able to help you. And we wouldn't call that unethical just because it's deceptive or manipulative or dishonest. It's just part of the process.
Sorry. Can you give me an example of that? Where is this, like, there might be a level of deception at the intake?
Right. So a counselor they'll use some sort of technique to get someone who might not otherwise volunteer the information to volunteer it. So like if you go in of your own free will, you're presumably already wanting to talk about some of this stuff, but it may be difficult for you and you have a level of anxiety about it and you're not talking about it. So they ease you in with maybe a more comfortable topic, like how's your day going or whatever, and they might use certain body language that makes you more comfortable in the office in order to get you to open up. And that's them manipulating you, maybe deceiving you a little bit about their intention with the question, but we still wouldn't call that unethical. Now, someone who's court ordered too, right? Like they might use a level of deception to convince that person that, oh yeah, I'm on your side. You don't need to be here. But since you're here, like, let's talk about this or that in order to get them to open up. And that might be like with someone like a narcissist or maybe like a schizoaffective type of person who's got some criminal background and they don't think they need to be in therapy, right? But again, like, I don't know that we would call it unethical for the counselor or therapist to be deceptive about getting information out of them.
The example I was thinking of is sports. If SD1 and I are coaching two opposing teams, let's say football, where there could be a lot of misdirection, trick plays, a lot of football is like a play action pass is, oh, we're going to make it look like a run, but it's not a run. Or, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And it's built into the game. And it is deception, but it's a part of the game. Now, does that feel similar with advantage play, or am I just trying to make an excuse there?
I really like that example. There's definitely a difference between having a playbook with trick plays. I mean, as JC Note points out, you're inherently in a competition with somebody. So if you're playing within the legal bounds of the game, then yeah, it's all good. There's a big difference between putting in some trick play on the field versus the dirty rat sheet John Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines blatantly breaking rules to beat their competition. There's a huge difference in that.
There is a clear line of rules that you don't violate. And then there is another line of, you're saying, misdirection, subterfuge.
Yeah. And again, it's part of the game. That is kind of what, to me, and I think to a lot of APs, there's somewhat an appealing nature to that. Is it unethical for an actor to be somebody whom they are not?
Okay, this is what I was just thinking of. We played poker with a bunch of APs a couple months ago, and one of them, she's a BJA member. I don't want to embarrass her, or maybe she'd be proud of this, but I don't think she'd ever played before, and she was telling people what her hand was. And she was never lying. 100%. She's like, well, I've got this, so I'm going to bet it. And it was hilarious.
At any point were you guys like, wait a minute, is she outplaying us here now? She lulled us into security and now maybe she's actually completely lying?
No. Well, not for me. I was like, oh, this is her first time playing and she's having fun and she's just, going for it. But to play poker well, you can't tell people what your hand is. Not only can you not tell people, the whole idea is that you try to play in a way where you maximize your value without the other person being able to figure out what your hand is. Because if they figure out your hand, they're going to maximize their value, or you're not going to be able to maximize your value.
Right. And representing strength, even though you may not have it, or representing weakness, even though you may not have that.
Exactly. And so if SD1 and I are going to play heads up poker, we're both going to be trying to play the game well, to not communicate what we have going on. And to me, that is what we're doing as card counters. Where did you guys draw the? Did you guys make up stories, or you could call that betting camouflage or playing camouflage, or I'm not a big fan of either of those. You could call that wearing a disguise. But what about when it gets to making up stories, like backstories and just flat out lying to the casino?
There was a lot of that. There was a few times where I felt kind of bad on the human element when it would be a really personal interaction. One was a casino president brought me into his office. No one else was around. And he said, hey, I know you're not card counting. I just want to let you know we're gonna assign someone to your table because they just need to watch you, but we know you're not card counting. And then I would feed into that, and let him continue to believe and reinforce his belief. I think they would have been different if it wasn't a tiny casino. If it was if the president of Caesars or something brought me in, I would be loving every second of it and relishing it. But I think that's just because, I don't know, it's sort of they're taking advantage of people on a much larger scale than this other mom and pop casino is. Neither one of them are morally correct in taking advantage of people. But yeah, I don't know. It's really tricky. Because if I were to play against a blackjack machine, there's no deception involved. You don't have to deceive the machine in the same way you have to deceive the human operator.
That's on them though, too. There's a reason we have to deceive it.
How about you guys and fabricating stories or flat out lying to casino employees?
I mean, you lie about why you're in the area a lot of times, right? I mean, sometimes you don't. If you want to just always take the approach of I'm here to gamble, you can do that. It might not be as effective if you're 12 hours away from home and there's however many casinos in between where you live and where that place is. But if you wanted to be totally honest, that would maybe be the way to do it. I'm not sure how to feel about it. Like, I don't know that it's inherently unethical when you're just trying to get time in to play, and it's just the nature of the game, right? I mean, they use deceptive tactics to get people in the door too. That's just sort of the playing field we're on, and I think everybody involved in a gambling endeavor needs to sort of accept that. At the same time, though, someone could make the case that particularly in the context of, say, receiving a comped room or a comped offer and doing so where you know they have the expectation of you giving them something, that being like EV for them, right? That maybe there's a case to be made there. I'm not sure how strong it would be, but I would think that's where the sort of devil's advocate position would come in. But I'm not sure how to steelman that exactly.
Because of my ridiculous slant and bias, I don't think I could even ever attempt to steelman their side. But I mean, to me, there are a lot of scenarios where I tell the truth or mostly true things. Like, I mean, when I was traveling for work, a lot of times I just said exactly what I did. I mean, and why I was in town or whatever. But there's been a heck of a lot of occasions where I represent myself to be something I am not for sure. And to me, that's part of the game. It's a lot of fun. And I view it as acting. Like I'm playing a part, and I'm playing that part because I'm allowed to, because it's within the confines of the rules of the game as I see them. And also it's fun.
This is one of the things I love about Advantage Play is it's forced me to think about things I wouldn't in other scenarios. Some people would say like, oh, well, aren't you, especially, coming from a conservative Christian background, are you worried about being greedy? And I would never ask myself that if I were like a high-priced lawyer. But then I do have to wrestle with that. Like, yeah, what is my motivation for Advantage Play? But similarly, I think about as far as like kind of you're saying acting. Well, at Red Robin, I was absolutely acting.
Yeah, as a server.
Acting like I was, so glad to see these strangers. And it was part of like, it's giving them the experience they want. And it was doing my job well, that paid me well to do my job well. If I wouldn't welcome them and be like, hey, I'm having a rough day and I wish I wasn't here right now. What would you like to order? So at least it's made me think about this.
Which is really healthy, I think. Any job that involves interaction with other people involves acting.
Yeah, it was a very small number of people.
Full stop.
I mean, even the people closest to it, we're not always just, it would be too much to just always just blurt out everything you're thinking at all.
I mean, I come close, though. I have that problem.
Well, I've got a follow-up question just on the telling of stories and lying about your profession or whatever. So clearly there's at some point, and not necessarily with regards to deception of the casino, but with regards to the lie you're telling, like there's got to be a point where a line is being crossed. Like in your presentation on the art of the act at boot camp, you comment on like stolen valor. And so like that's clearly a line that you won't cross.
Yeah.
So like where would that line be? Like, would it be wrong to misrepresent yourself as a medical professional and then, oh, someone's having a medical emergency, they think you're a doctor, and now you can't actually do anything about it because you were lying about being a doctor?
Yeah. And then you just say, no, not a real doctor. I'm a dentist. Sorry to Colin.
No. My brother makes that joke all the time.
Yeah. Or a veterinarian. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to wrestle with. And what I also say is don't represent something you can't talk about. And I'm sure most people couldn't talk about being a doctor when they're not a doctor. Maybe a nurse could come close to it and they could represent themselves in that way. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play a part, you better know the part, you better research it. But ethically, this is where it all comes down to, like, what does your conscience say? At what point are you crossing that line? And yeah, that is something like, because one of the things I use as an act could definitely be perceived as, oh, you were for military or our military or whatever. And absolutely not. I never, a lot of times that question comes out and I'm like, no, I did not serve. And that's a big deal to me because a large part of my family served. And I see that as a big red line for sure. Some people might not because they're like, well, I'm just acting too. I think those people are pieces of shit, but that's my perspective.
Yeah, you bring up the really valid point. It could feel like a cop-out, but I think people need to really search for themselves. What I think about is, how am I going to look back at this down the road? And there are decisions I've made that I look back and regretted. I talk about in 21st Century Card Counter, I got a whole bunch of calendars that had all these promotional chips and Ace as your first card, coupon, whatever. It was supposed to be $10 a copy. They gave me 10 for $10. And I was like, sweet, and walked right out. And the next time I went in there, the manager's like, hey, you owe me a bunch of calendars back. And I was like, huh? And like, I just straight up pretended like I didn't know. And I always felt bad about that. It wasn't worth it. Like, oh, what did I get? A few $100, maybe $1,000 of EV. I saved $90. I would rather pay them the $90 than feel like I had to like lie and deny it. But I tended personally to give stories that were factually true, but probably not the assumption they were going to make. Like I'd say, oh, what do you do? And be like, my family has real estate, which was true. My parents owned 3 houses. They were not rich, but they had bought a retirement home for my grandparents. They had a rental property and they had their house. And people are assuming real estate like rolling, or I would say short-term investing, because card counting is short-term investing. And I would just let them imagine whatever they wanted with it. That's what I felt comfortable with, though I did do things that I look back and say, I wouldn't do that. I feel fine with those answers. I think if someone wouldn't feel comfortable with that, you can straight out say like, oh, I've been playing a lot of cards lately, or, like not a whole lot, or, something that's even more, I don't have a day job right now, and live with how the casino responds. Honestly, the casino's probably not really thinking about what you say too much.
Yeah.
I remember Ben, who I ran a team with once, they yelled out, hey, Ben, you count cards, right? And he's like, oh yeah, of course I do. Everyone does, right? And then like, he just like did not deny it. But people needed to figure out for themselves what they're comfortable with. And I would hope that you'd make decisions that you could live with in 5 years, 10 years.
It feels like the most important thing is you kind of wrestle with it at least, and then check yourself. And I mean, to me, this is just mature growth. And you look back and you go, was I okay with that? How would I do this differently? And maybe you are completely okay with it, but maybe you're like, I'm just not really going to do that anymore. That creates growth. Like, I'm really curious about Joe. I mean, did you feel bad about beating up on a bunch of old people playing Wii bowling?
No, that was awesome. But that was awesome. Only because usually I'm not very good at video games. So the fact that I felt fine about that. But I don't know. It's kind of like when you play poker, everyone's sort of agreeing to deceive together. And then let's say you step up to a blackjack table, it's a little bit different because there's not that same understood agreement, but that's only just because how many % of the customers can do what we do? It's so small. It's so rare.
Well, and what's the agreement? What are you sitting down and agreeing to? Are we supposed to sit down and agree to be deceived, but not to deceive? Because that's what, in effect, is happening at a blackjack table.
Yeah, and all of your moves and your hits and your stand, they're all out in the open. Everyone can see. You're not hiding your card. Like everything's out. I really don't think it's bad to deceive in that way. And the intent is you're there to beat your opponent and play a game. You're not there to necessarily like make friendships or long-lasting business partnerships together.
You brought up that being brought into the VP or the president's office, there have been occasions where I've been allowed to play for a very long time at many sessions at particular places where you get to know the dealers. And like, the dealers they're human beings. And if they like you, they're ones that like open up and they share. And I was just playing, I was on a trip just recently and it was hilarious. Well, hilarious and sweet, but like, one of my teammates had been in there and really had bonded with another dealer. And like the next day we're playing this game and that dealer was done with their shift and found out that she was in the casino and run up to her and just gave her a huge hug. It was like, it was really good talking to you yesterday. Like there can be a little bit of like, but in the same breath, you can also say, I know that this person, my teammate on this play, like she was genuinely interested in and talking to and having a conversation with this dealer. She wasn't specifically doing it to manipulate the dealer. It was genuine.
Do you guys have the experience where you get backed off and sort of like, it's like the football game and the game's over? And like all the subterfuge is done. And now, it's like they backed you off and they're like, oh, wow, really respect your skill, whatever. And it's like, okay, hey, game's over. Now I can talk to them, human to human, not competitors anymore. You have that experience?
Yeah, I think so. Especially if it's specifically for card counting where like, obviously that's what I was doing. Like it doesn't take that much to figure it out. I'm not hiding anything at that point. A lot of times, like, I'll shake whoever backs me off's hand and compliment them and say, hey, you guys are sharp back there. You guys know what you're doing. And sometimes they'll offer up information that way of like what tipped them off to even phone up to surveillance or whatever that might be. And, sometimes you just have a good conversation with them too. Sometimes they still don't like you and they just say, all right, well, get lost. And you go, all right, I'll get out of your hair, and you leave. But yeah, for sure. There's some sense of relief there in the interaction.
I feel that relief in a weird way sometimes when I'm down a bunch and I'm forced to CTR and show my ID and then they make me a player's card. Then in some ways, I mean, the back off is probably going to come soon, but I'm also relaxed because I'm playing rated. They know who I am and I can just like relax. I don't know at that point.
You've even asked like, oh, what tipped you off?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The beginning. Yeah. I stopped doing that later on, but yeah, definitely at the beginning. And I made a list. There's a forum post I made a long time ago. All the reasons people think I'm not, or people think I was counting cards or not counting cards. Those are all the manager's answers as to what they believed was the reason I wasn't until they changed their mind. But
all right, let's talk about dealer errors. Where do you put the ethical line of accepting, or, if a dealer makes an error in your favor, do you accept it silently? Do you point it out? Something in between?
I always find this topic really interesting because within the confines of the game and the legality of it, again, we're talking about ethics, but it is on the house to deal and play the game in such a manner, and their obligation is to protect their own game. And that is how it's written out in most court proceedings that have happened over AP play. But there is this other side to it. Like, how do you feel about it? And does it make you not feel great that you do that? And that's something that I think, again, back to the point, like you need to wrestle with. I've thought about this a lot, actually, because this question is often used at boot camp. If I go through Chipotle and I order double chicken and they forgot to put up that little tent, and then I get to the cashier, every time I'm like, oh, I got double chicken, I correct it because I don't feel good about taking advantage or not being charged what I ordered. But on a blackjack table, if they pay me on a push, I'm like, yep, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
So why is that? Why do you feel bad about Chipotle and why you don't feel bad about?
It's probably because my bias that I think in my heart of hearts that casinos are just evil.
But also it is important to point out you have the legal high ground.
Yeah. I mean, but you do it Chipotle too.
No, I'm just saying I don't want someone listening being like, he doesn't mind stealing from casino, where it's not.
Yeah.
Legally, it is their responsibility. If they overpay you, you did not do anything legally wrong.
It's not illegal. It's on them. And I think the only time I've wrestled with it on the casino side is because I kind of thought through this once when I was driving. I still remember this whole, I was doing like quiet driving, which is, by the way, I encourage people to do from time to time. There's a lot of noise in this world. And I was thinking about this particular topic, and I think it was right after a boot camp. That's why I was thinking about it. But I started, like we all do, rationalizing, because we all rationalize and justify our own decisions. That's just a human trait. And I was like, well, if I took that double chicken and didn't get charged for it, like, what would that mean for the employee? Like, could they get in trouble? And maybe that's what makes it different. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that dealer could also get in trouble, because, guys, remember, the number one job of surveillance is actually not us. It's to watch the employees, which is why surveillance is so universally hated. They're watching for employee theft, and they're watching for employee mistakes that cost the casino money. So, like, okay, so that doesn't really apply. And at the end of the day, or the end of my quiet time in my car, I just landed on the conclusion that one of them is outside the bounds of a game that I am playing, and one of them is not. And in the game that I am playing in the casino is what I do for a living. And to me, that's part of the game.
Let's say it's a little old man or a little old lady dealer. They've been there for like 60 years, and clearly they have like brain fog, and they don't deal very well. Do you feel any worse about taking the mistakes, or?
I think that if it were a scenario that you just laid out and it was a repetitive thing, I think I would start feeling bad about it. Like making a mistake on and like paying a push, for instance, that randomly happening. Cool, game on. A person that is repeating that mistake and something that is just off, I think I would start feeling bad about that. And then also the gamesmanship in me would also be like, I can also get the casino on my side by like saying, hey, like, I don't want to get them in trouble, but like this is happening, and I just, want to let you guys know, like, I want to give this money back, like on the spot or whatever. So it would be kind of twofold.
Or the flip side, it's like, let's say it's a really young break-in dealer and their hands are kind of shaking because you're betting big. They've never seen that before and they're making mistakes. Do you think you would at that point be like, look, you overpaid me,
I've had that, and I let him mispay me. I think that I'll say two things to this. One is that the way that I've always approached it, and I've given this illustration before, is like a baseball game. If the umpire says you're safe and you thought you were out, I'd be like, sweet, all right. I wouldn't say, no, guys, I'm out, and head to the dugout, because we're playing the game. They're responsible for officiating it. And if what they say is we're going to pay you, I'll say, sweet, let's keep playing. The second thing I'd say is, for the church team, when we ran the team, what we told players is, hey, here's how we approach it. However, if you have any moral or ethical problem with this, don't do it. Like, we don't want people violating their conscience for the benefit of the team.
And then they were fired. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But we're going to have to let you go. No, because that is really important. Like, I feel comfortable with that. And maybe I am deceiving myself, but I feel like that's fair. Like, those are the rules, and I'm playing by the rules.
Can I just be the devil's advocate here?
Yeah.
Your baseball example is a little bit different because the umpire is they're drawing an imaginary box in their mind, and it's a little bit more vague. With the blackjack, it's black or white. Like, they shouldn't have given you. It was a wrong decision to give you that thing, that chip or whatever. So it is black and white.
It's a neutral party also calling the balls and strikes. It's not a member of one of the other teams. However, if gaming came in, which is the quote unquote neutral party, what would happen? You get to keep the money.
Yeah. And if I'm playing, let's say it's like a pickup softball game, and I get to the bag and they're like, you're safe. And I'm like, okay. maybe be like, nah, I think I was clearly out. But in this game, I've felt comfortable with it. I also know, and maybe this is justification, but I know there's a reality that there are mispays that have probably happened, not in my favor, that I missed. And I'm not saying they're doing it intentionally, but it does happen. And that plays into the EV, as do the mispays in my favor. But let's take it a step further. What about stacking chips in a way to try to confuse payouts? Or, there's like, what if you wave with your hand like stay, but then verbally say hit to confuse them?
Or putting more out for the insurance bet.
Well, so first off, like beyond just the ethical component of it, it's probably not wise because they hate shot takers more than they hate card counters. And that's going to get you labeled as a shot taker or someone who's trying to cheat or get a free roll. As far as those actions are concerned, I mean, I'm not a fan of them. From an ethical perspective, though, it's tough to see where the line is. And because this sort of applies to just the inadvertent mispay. And this also sort of applies to tipping too, because at a certain point, when you're thinking about ethics and you're thinking about like ethical axioms for your decision making and your behavior, so you have a responsibility for the welfare of anybody that your actions impact, but nobody's impacted by your own actions more than you are. So that's a case that, the sort of self-serving behaviors like that aren't totally unethical as long as you can justify that the pain caused to another is justifiable by the gain to yourself, that it doesn't outweigh that. As far as like intentionally like waving your hand and saying hit, things like that, I don't know, that's a tough one. Like I wouldn't personally do it just because I think there's other reasons to not do it, but I don't know if ethically it's incorrect. Like I have a tough time finding like a logical position against it. Like there's a lot of emotional positions against it for sure, but I don't know if there's a logical position against it other than you don't want to get 86 for being a shot taker instead of a card counter.
Right, because technically, what are the dealers supposed to go by? Not what you say, but what you signal. So technically speaking, it's on the dealer should they listen to you. But yeah, it is shot taking, but it's hard to argue that there's something ethically wrong with it in terms of the more legal approach to it.
When I think about this, there's like the little angel and the devil on show. I hear the little angel's Tommy Highland, and he's like, I want to beat them straight up.
Yeah.
And that to me doesn't feel like beating them straight up. If they mispay me and it's their mistake, that's different from I've somehow manipulated them. I just personally, I don't feel comfortable with.
So then what do you fall on the infamous bot case with Phil Ivey?
Oh, man.
Because, like, to me, the court's got it wrong. He asked for things. The casino gave it to him. But he did, in fact, manipulate the circumstances of the game to make the read better.
But we're talking ethics versus, like, I think legally he should have been paid out.
Yeah, so I'm not asking about what you think on the court case. That's why I said,
would I play that game?
Yes, because you just said manipulation of
and
the
that gets
circumstance.
into hole carding. Tommy's not comfortable with hole carding.
Yep.
Because that's where the quote comes. He's like, I want to beat a casino straight up. And to him, hole carding doesn't feel like that. And I even think with a hole carding, there's a spectrum of it.
Well, it for sure is.
There's like, they're showing me the hole card versus
I can make the hole card read better or there.
So for me, I think that's where it does come into this kind of personal. I think we get to some other acts or things that to me are further down the line from just like, it's where do you land on it? But that's how I feel. Where do you land, Joe?
I've said this before, but I mean, I'm on AP side, hole carding wise, legally and everything like that, in order for you to make your money or whatever. But card counting feels different to me than hole carding. Because if I was playing like a game with my friends and I was seeing the undercard in whatever game and I was using that to my advantage, that just feels slimy and wrong to me.
The casinos aren't your friends.
But if you're better at the game than your friends, then you'd feel fine with it.
Right. Yeah.
So the devil's advocate position to that then would be that, well, isn't like card handling part of the game? And that's part of being good at the game, is handling the cards and seeing the cards and hiding your own cards. That would be the devil's advocate position to that.
Yeah, there's legal framework, and the casinos set procedural precedent, and they train to do things a certain way. So
right. Well, I mean,
it's their job to check their employees.
Even amongst friends, though, like you could make the case that you're better than your friends at the game because you handle your cards better.
Yeah, you can. You can definitely.
I don't know if that's correct. That's just giving a counterpoint, but
yeah, it's interesting because like card marking with edge sorting, you are card marking, but you're doing it without ink.
Yeah,
it's an invisible card marking essentially.
Yeah, I get. They marked the cards, and you're just sorting them. Whereas marking is you're marking the cards, and I think that's where the legality difference comes in.
Well, technically, they didn't mark the cards. A third party did.
They're using marked cards.
They're using marked cards.
Which maybe I've told this before, but when I first learned how to play poker, it was with my best friend in high school, and we would play for just pennies or whatever. And he was just clobbering me for about a week, and he would just laugh about it until he told me he had a like trick deck. He knew. And then he was like, "All right, I can't live with this anymore."
You let that go for a week?
Something like that.
That's great.
I feel like with this, more hole carding than the shot taking. I feel like I am comfortable with either side. Like, I don't think Tommy should ever play a hole card game, and I don't fault my friends that do hole card.
What about the Don Johnson story that he told in the YouTube interview where he had tens or something? He didn't wave it off. The dealer blew past him, started dealing, and he said, whoa, I didn't give you a signal. I wanted to split those tens, or he wanted them, or whatever it was, to get the hand. Do you feel like what he did was wrong? I mean, because they didn't follow procedure. You're supposed to wait for the signal, and they didn't. So
I think the law's on his side. I would feel like I'm taking a shot doing that, unless I legitimately was going to split them. But I don't fault him for that. It's like they screwed up. That's me. I mean, it's not like my opinion is any more valid than your guys. Where do you land on this?
Sorry, it was I think he had a 17 is what it was, and then the 4 came out next, and then he said, "Hey, I wanted to hit. I wanted to hit."
It's tricky. We're talking about just like they blew past you without a hand signal. You could make the case that if like any reasonable person would have made the decision that maybe the dealer was fair to blow past like a hard 17 or something like that, where there's not really another sensible action.
What's a sensible action in gambling?
Good point. Good point. There's not a whole lot of reason inside the casino doors. But I think that's a position that could be argued. I don't know that it's correct. Like my personal opinion would be, again, that like your ethical obligation to yourself is important too, and that you should think of yourself as somebody worth treating ethically. And if your decision was blown past and it benefits you to call that out, then why shouldn't you? I think that's where I would land on it. Personally, most of these topics are tough to cover in such a short span of time without just going into moral relativism. So
I was thinking about it, the example of I've never, they can like kind of blow past you with insurance, and I will stand up for myself if I legitimately was going to buy insurance, but I've never done that where they're like insurance closed and they flip it over. If I wasn't going to buy insurance, I wouldn't be like, hey, you didn't give me a chance, but I will absolutely stick up for myself if I was going to. That's where I land on it. I guess I feel like anything that feels like shot taking to me, I don't personally want that to be how I made my money is shot take. I want it to be, I'm fine if they made a procedural mistake. That's on them. But if I'm doing something to manipulate them, I feel personally less great about it.
I agree with that. But the fact is that every individual has a different line. And as long as they're operating within legal bounds, you just have to keep asking yourself, are you okay with this? Can you sleep at night? Is this going to bother you? Is this how, to your point, how you want to make your money?
I must just be an evil person because I feel totally fine with that. If I, like the Don Dodson situation, if that same thing happened to me, I would do the same thing. And I think it's no different than you looking for a dealer who's cutting off. Let's say that the casino procedure, they have a notch and they're supposed to cut off 1.5, and you have some dealer who's cutting off less than a deck. How is that any different than seeking out that one dealer, giving compliments to that dealer, tipping that dealer, like zoning in on that dealer all the time? Like,
you're right. I realized I was being inconsistent because I said if they make a procedural mistake, I'm okay with it. But they did make a procedural mistake. Yeah. They didn't wait for a hand signal. So no, I don't know what I think. Well, what about respecting trespasses or ID requests?
I love this topic just because of, you mentioned the angel on your shoulder before, Tommy Highland, because Tommy Highland is so like, he has these moral standards and like he will not hole card, where I love hole carding and I think it's great. And he has some of these regimented things with games and how he wants to make his money and the shot taking and all that stuff. But then you ask him, well, you got trespassed from this property, legally told you not to come back. And he's like, nah, I don't believe in those. Which is hilarious to me. Not that he's wrong. I'm just saying it's hilarious to me.
Yep. On that one, he just defaults to the law. It's a kind of an interesting one. Because I was saying this last night, I was saying like, oh, I don't ever break the law. And I was like, I'll go, if the speed limit's 60, I don't mind going 61 miles an hour, 62 miles an hour, whatever it may be, but I'm comfortable with the risks. The risks are I could get a ticket. And if I kept getting tickets, I could lose my license or whatever. And that's how I feel about the trespass thing. Tommy or I could be told, hey, you can't come back here. And if you do, we could arrest you for trespassing. And he'll go back 6 months later and again 6 months later, time and time again, because he's comfortable with the risk of that they actually could follow through with it.
Well, I think his card counting journey was born in Jersey, where it was like, okay, we're trespassing you. It's illegal to come back. But then eventually the law was like, oh, actually, we were wrong. It's illegal for us to back you off. So we're not going to do this anymore. And I feel like him going to other states, repeating the same thing he was doing in the early days in Jersey, he's just sort of doing the same thing. It's like, okay, it's illegal for me to come back maybe technically, but it just hasn't been litigated yet in this state. And if it does come to that time, it could change.
And he's willing to litigate it too. That's what I would say to all y'all out there. Are you willing to litigate it? Because Tommy took it to court many, many times and won all but one. And that was a tribal. Is that what it was?
It was a unique casino it was a membership or something. There was something different, but.
So he won like 4 or 5 cases or something like that. So he's willing to spend the money and the time and to litigate it also.
No, that's a good point. He's not just saying I'm comfortable with it. He's saying, no, I don't even believe this is legal for them to,
And that brings up the whole thing. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's like morally correct in this period of history, right?
Right, slavery used to be legal.
Things, yeah.
So legal-wise, it's just consequences. It doesn't necessarily make it morally or ethically correct.
And if the consequence is just a fine, then that means it's legal for a price.
Exactly. That's how I feel about the speeding thing is like, here's the way we set it up. You can fine me and I'm comfortable with that. Like I'm not driving, unsafe or 30 miles over the speed. I'm talking, what I'm comfortable with. The 5, 10, maybe in the middle of nowhere, maybe a little more, but.
Which essentially makes it a game. I'm willing to pay this fine to have the privilege of driving 20 over.
Like, let's say driving while drinking was legal. I still think it's morally wrong to drink and drive.
Well, driving any way that, is unsafe. And that's such a gray statement. Unsafe.
Have you seen the videos of when they started making it illegal to drink and drive, or actually even have an open container in the car, like the old news reels of them interviewing people, and the guy's like, man, I mean, what kind of communist country are we living in now? Man works a hard day, leaves the mill, deserves a cold beer on the drive home. What are we even doing? Like, it's hilarious because there was some serious pushback from people, same with seatbelt laws.
Yeah. Seatbelt laws are even more interesting because you could say drinking and driving puts other drivers at risk.
Right.
Not wearing a seatbelt doesn't put other drivers at risk. However, it is more expensive for our society
Yeah.
to have people driving without seatbelts. But anyway, that's a tangent. But that's an interesting one. Well, let's keep moving. What about the reality that as APs, we're making decisions that impact the AP community? For example, if I camp out at a casino and burn it down, it could very well make that casino worse for the next AP. How do I live with myself?
I'll take this one, fellas. The thing is, it's been going on since the beginning. What are we going to blame Ed Thorpe for even creating the system to begin with? Like, that ruined, he could have developed his card counting system and then not published the book and not told anyone. But I don't think anyone has faulted Ed Thorpe for...
Someone has. I'm sure some people, especially back in the 60s.
And also, you don't have any data metrics on like your exact session that caused the casino to change, or for sure that's you is the reason.
I don't know. I mean, there are instances where it's pretty directly observable when one person impacts a table games department or any other department. And usually it's in like these really small places. There is a casino that I was playing this year and there's other factors at play there too, right? Like, it's not just it's not just the AP, but the AP definitely has an impact. But this is the sort of place that, I mean, they had a $3 minimum on weekdays. I don't know how they're making money in the first place. And I go in there, and by the time they told me no more, and they still didn't figure it out, they just were scared. Like, I had more of their black chips than they did. Right. And so, and now it's a month later and their table games have been shut down and they're probably not coming back, at least not anytime soon. And it's also the same casino that 7 years ago, if any of you have heard the first podcast they did with BJA, ran the Joker promotion. And not long after that, they got rid of table games then. And it wasn't until 5 years later they came back. So when you get sort of the combination of, well, you get the extreme circumstance of a place that's not making a lot of money as it is, and then an AP going in there and hitting them really hard at something, sometimes you do directly observe it. It would be tough to quantify exactly how much that costs another AP, but I've definitely seen the impacts of that, and I've been responsible for that particular casino nixing its table. Well, not totally responsible. It's also the responsibility of the table games manager and the game protection too. Like, it's not my responsibility to keep them in business, but definitely like my actions contributed very directly to this place closing down its tables twice. And I don't know how to feel about that as far as it impacts other APs, because again, it goes back to, you've got to do what's best for yourself, because you are not just the moral agent, but you're a subject of your own moral actions as a moral agent. But it might make things tougher for other APs, but at the same time, that's just part of the game that we play. And it's not just us, it's the casino reacting to us too. And if they handled game protection in a way where they just didn't offer stuff that was so easily exploitable, then none of us would have a career in AP, but also they would have nothing to worry about. And they could do that without an AP attacking it. They could just do that by looking at the game and going, oh, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and also, it feels like this needs to be said. Nobody owns a game, nor do you have a right to that game. Like, it's the environment. Unfortunately, we operate in a world that, and this goes down a whole other rabbit hole, we require ploppies. We need gamblers that wreck their lives and lose money to do what we do. We require casinos to offer games. We have no right to those games. We can't go to a court of law and demand that casino games be offered. It doesn't work that way. So you taking out the table games, no other AP had a right to that. And this is kind of what bothers me in the other AP community. Yeah, don't be stupid. Don't talk. Don't burn down a game by running your mouth. Like, you want to protect that game, but at the end of the day, that's for your own good. That's not because you own that game. And I've had situations where another team comes in even later than what we were playing and act as if, well, it's their game. We're stepping on them. even though they came in later. But the reality is that we came in at the same time or we came in later. They don't own the game. They have no right to the game. So hurting other APs, you're not hurting the AP. You're simply taking a piece off of the chessboard. That's it.
Right. And this is maybe getting a little off the subject of ethics, but just as far as like stepping on another AP's toes that's already on the game, I think the main reason for not doing that isn't so much ethical as it is like playing the prisoner's dilemma, where you're cooperating in hopes that you'll have cooperation in the future.
Right, which is how teams should operate.
I feel like so much of that is out of your control, variance-wise, swings-wise. Let's say you have one guy who comes in, he only plays for 2 hours. He has the biggest winning session of his entire career. And then the casino is forever changed after that guy coming in for 2 hours. And you have another person who's there for 200 hours grinding out, wins very little, but then they back him off. Are you going to say, but then the guy who only played 2 hours, who played more modestly, quote unquote, less brazen, just had a really big upswing and the casino reacted to that. So
that's a fair point. And a lot of times their reactions are nonsensical because it might just be a ploppy running good. And they go, oh, well, it's because we let them double after split, so we're taking away double after split. And it's like, no, that's not why, but okay. And it still made the game worse, but it wasn't an AP that attacked it.
Yeah, I think BJA takes some criticism because, maximizer versus optimizer and everybody this is absolutely not a true thing, a true statement, but there's an impression amongst some other APs out there that BJA only teaches maximizing and burning it down and blah, blah. That's not true. Number one. Number two, there's nothing wrong with maximizing.
Yeah, I mean, I got into card counting, admiring and looking up to MIT team, Highlanders, the Greeks, these teams that this is the way that they played. And I wasn't like, they've made it worse for me. It's like, wow, good for them,
Right.
And I'm going to play this way. We also can get some flack for like, we're making advantage play worse by putting out videos or podcasts or whatever on this. And I guess one thing I would say is like, I do take that seriously, but James Grosjean, he chimed in on kind of this in some blog posts or something, but it's kind of this idea, and this doesn't make it legally or even ethically the right way to look at it. It's just a way to look at it is like, well, what's the net impact? And so for me personally, I want the net impact to be more money taken out of casinos, and you could even look at that as an individual card counter where it's like, well, I have this opportunity. I don't know if it's going to be here tomorrow for the next, because this is what I said, I'm going to keep my big mouth shut. It's like, well, what do we do? Create an agreement among all advantage players about what's the appropriate amount you're allowed to extract. Like we all APs agree we will stop once we're up X number of dollars to leave the game for the next. Like that's not ever going to happen. The thing might not be there tomorrow, but it's here today. I'm going to try to extract that. And if BJA was making less money come out of casinos rather than more, I would change, and there is a sense to that. Why don't we put out a video every week? Or why don't, it's like, well, I do want to kind of like limit the exposure and maximize the net amount of money being extracted from. Do I have a way to guarantee that? No, I don't, but that's the way I think about it. And I've even like polled my AP friends and said, hey, do you think we're causing more damage than good?
When you're also, everybody's universally, when this criticism comes up, they tried to take an ethical stance, and it's more of like a superiority stance. We don't operate in a vacuum. My optimization is worth a heck of a lot more than a lot of people's maximizing. So what's my net impact on the casino's game? My optimize might be $600 an hour, where somebody else is spreading 1 to 100 and they're still only getting $110 an hour.
Yeah.
Who hurt the game worse?
I'm going to defend BJA here for a second.
Which I didn't mean to make it about BJA. I just think it does. It does.
I brought it up. I brought the criticism.
It's just
up.
an interesting, because like Ed Thorpe, he sold 700,000 copies in the 60s. So that's potentially 700,000 extra card counters he introduced in a time where there wasn't that many casinos, and it was easier to beat than it is today. Way easier to beat. The thing is, just because the information is out there, you still have to do the practice. Like you have to drill for 300 hours. You have to do everything. Like, so there's still so much extra work that needs to be done versus just providing the information in a digestible way. And
the reason I bring it up is it does apply to that same thing of like, well, should I limit my time in a casino or my bet spread in a casino for the next AP? And the reality is, like, we don't know the future, but it's like I have an opportunity to take money out of a casino today, and I've never faulted a team that came before me or an AP that came before me for just clobbering a game. I've never faulted them for it, even if I'm like, oh man, I wish that would have been me. I don't fault them for it. Though I would fault them if it was because they were like blabbing about something or, crossing a moral line to exploit something, like that. I might fault someone for, but not for like beating a game straight up for a large amount of money and then the game's gone.
Well, criticizing one business to another business completely outside of AP for going at it as hard as they can to try to generate the most revenue they can. Like why.
And there is this reality that a lot of APs, they don't want anyone else to have access to this information. Yep. It's like they want to know that this thing exists, but not for anyone else. And so then they get upset if anyone else finds out, but then they're not upset if they got that information. That feels a little bit hypocritical.
Right. Like back to my point before. You don't have a right to the game. You are owed nothing. I don't know why people think that they are.
I also think what's way worse than quote unquote burning a game down by being good and disciplined at it is treating backoffs in a hostile and rude way. That is, I think, way more impactful negatively to the next card counter is you being an asshole during a back off. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, we're going to start trespassing all these card counters because.
Yes. I mentioned it yesterday at the boot camp, James Grosheen's article about being a nit. Don't be a nit in a casino. We just heard a story of someone that they were very confrontational in a back off at a casino that is known for being very polite. Like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't good for you. And this is really bad for the entire AP community. Don't do that crap.
I really don't like the rise of the confrontation, and it's happening because they want to put content on the internet. So they're specifically doing it in order to get reactions because they get clicks. And I really don't like that.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a boomer, but burning games or creating a negative association of APs for social media content doesn't make me feel great. Well, let's kind of wrap this up, but I want to hit on kind of just like the personal, the human layer of it. Well, I'll start with this. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. One of my regrets, I've talked about this before, I think primarily in 21st century card counter, is I regret treating casino personnel as NPCs rather than treating them like humans. Whatever, not to get religious, but I believe people are made inherently of value, or the theological thing is made in God's image. I want to treat them like that, not like a piece of code to exploit.
Same goes for ploppies. I was just sharing with some of the people the other day. My favorite podcast that I've done was Joe and I's podcast of our interview with the gambling advocate, Brian Hatch, and his advocacy as a problem gambler himself. Like, I absolutely love that podcast, and it like drove home to me more than anything. It had so much value to our community. Number one, safeguarding against what could happen to you, even though you call yourself an AP, being in the environment and how things are there to manipulate you, and it can impact your brain. That's an important part. But the more important part was specifically like we say ploppy, and that's what they are, but they're human beings, and the staff are human beings. So that's what one of the things I've always, from day one, admired about BJA, Colin, is be nice. It's advantageous for you to be not memorable, but also like they're people. And that's a really big deal. that podcast really just drove it home more. And Brian really appreciated us doing the podcast with him, knowing what we do, and I remember on that podcast was just like, thank you for saying that. And he made the joke. He's like, I mean, degenerates and problem gamblers are pieces of shit. And started sharing stories about the horrible things that he did because of his problem, but recognizing that they're human beings just like we are.
So the next part, as far as the human layer, is being able to turn off when the game's done, meaning like, I think there needs to be a treating people like humans in the casino, but then also if there's an act, if there's a like, all right, using the football analogy, the clock's running, there's going to be subterfuge or misdirection, being hyper aware that turns off when you're out of the casino, that you're not saying, hey, how am I going to try to game family, friends, teammates? If I were finding that was happening to me, it would make me rethink how far I'm willing to push that in a casino. If I can't handle turning on and off the gamesmanship, maybe I just do advantage play in a way where I don't need to worry about gamesmanship, because I don't want that following me outside of the casino. I'll just say, like, honestly, I think when I was playing full time, it got easy to see the whole world as an AP play. And I can look back and say, yeah, I don't want to advantage play my friends and family or not even friends and family, but just like the Chipotle example.
Yeah. When you do AP long enough, I mean, let's call it what do we actually do for a living? We play games for a living. That's what we do. The same thing happens if you're playing a Monopoly game. Like, you're trying to win. There's a bit of manipulation. You might be offering a deal that is better for you and the other player doesn't, in exchange for property or whatever. Or even a better example, playing something like Mafia, where everything is deception. Like, we play games for a living. If you do that long enough, I think that you do have to constantly be checking yourself, because the better you get at it, the more you see the edges. And yeah, I don't want to game my family. I don't want to game my friends. I don't want to game society as a whole, like other people.
Or even the AP community, like networking or whatever, that could become a whole, like,
yeah.
Networking could be, I treat people well and wise about what I share, but I treat people well. Hopefully I'll be treated well also. Or it could be like, how do I game these people so I always benefit more than I give?
Yep.
That can happen too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's human nature. Like, you're not an evil person for thinking this way, for having these thoughts, or for seeing these quote unquote edges because of weaknesses, procedure problems. But I mean, it's real. Like, that's a really good point. It's a real thing.
I guess the only thing I might add to it might be, even if you do get to a point where you're looking at the world and other people as a game to be exploited, like, even if you get to that point where you're just completely Machiavellian outside the casino too, is that hopefully you can go down a path of logic that would still lead you to the conclusion that treating people by the platinum rule, not the golden rule, I don't like the golden rule, but the platinum rule, which is to do unto others as you expect they would want done unto them, that will benefit you more in the long run anyway. Because again, like, it goes back to the classic prisoner's dilemma in game theory, where when you repeat interactions over and over again, cooperation is the best action to take. And, it doesn't mean you shouldn't, like, defect and defend yourself when you need to, but that cooperation should be your default. And so if you follow that line of thinking, you should eventually come to the conclusion that, well, even if I think that I should be completely self-serving and manipulating even outside of the casino, that the best way to do that is to still treat other people as though I'm not doing that, right? To still do things to benefit them, and that's going to benefit me too. So I guess that would be that would be my only addition to it, is that even even the antisocial, or not antisocial, but sort of sociopathic way of doing things, the strategic way of doing things would still lead you to treating other people properly in order to maximize value for the self.
I think the only thing I'd like to add is I don't believe you have to do any sort of misdirection to be a card counter. It is possible to say, if I'm ever asked if I'm counting cards, I will say, yes, I am. Yeah, or, I don't ever have to take a mispay. I don't ever have to use betting cover, playing cover, wear a hat. Like, you can do that. And then as far as if you have no ethical issues with it, like I think that's a personal decision, though we did, kind of talk ad nauseum about where each of us thinks the line is crossed. But I don't want people to think, because I do think people out there probably assume you have to be unethical to be a card counter. And I've found a lot of APs to be some of the most ethical people I know, though there are bad apples out there. I think it can attract some bad apples because it is a game and it is casinos or whatever, but it also has attracted some of the most ethical people I've met.
Yeah, I agree. Games and money, those two things always can attract the dark triad or just shitty people, like full stop. Stock trading, like same kind of thing.
Yeah, this has been a long one. Hopefully people are enjoying it or have enjoyed this and got the wheels turning for themselves, and let us know where we're wrong on the forum. And check out Blackjack Apprenticeship if you want to be an unethical casino cheating scumbag like us. And we'll catch you guys next time.